Good morning, everybody. If you're just getting on, please remember to mute your phones. This is Barbara, and yesterday, please mute your phone. Thank you. Yesterday, we were going to begin going in a different direction in terms of talking about Ten Commandments, but you know how we let things unfold themselves, and there was an unreadiness in terms of moving ahead because there were some things that needed to be discussed, questions that came up related to concerns about expressions of feeling pressured and burdened and heaviness and feelings of Groundhog Day type feelings. And there were enough people who were experiencing that for us to simply dwell there, to stay there, to deal with that. And that's what we did. Some people expressed it as a feeling that there was getting ready to be a massive shift and they were okay where they are, knowing the shift was occurring. Others felt that it was harder to concentrate and center themselves when they felt this pressure, this feeling, if you will. It was sometimes a little bit harder to center themselves, meditate. This feeling with the walls closing in. We also talked about what it meant. What is the pressure vent? How do we get rid of the pressure? How do we get rid of all of this that we're feeling? That all of it it's not necessarily a negative thing. I think Kathy summed that up beautifully. It's not a negative thing. We are Elohim, and this is expected. This is who we are. We're feeling the pressures not only within our own lives and sphere, but on behalf of humankind. So what is our pressure vent? When you cook something in a pressure cooker and the food is cooking, there's a vent that allows for release of pressure when it builds up on the inside. What is our pressure vent? Some people did it in different ways for themselves that worked for them. Some people did it by reading spiritual information. Others did it by meditation. But then we talked about, well, could it be that, please mute your phone. Could it be that what we were experiencing was Elohim having that human experience? And I believe it was Kathy who summed it up very nicely by reminding us that when you have olives, in order to get the oil out of there, it has to be under pressure. But when you have grapes, in order to get to the wine, it has to be under pressure, if you will, or they literally get in there and just press down on the grapes with their feet in some instances. So the issue still is, could it be that this is part of the Elohim having that human experience? And what was important yesterday was that we had to realize that those are the kinds of things that we were experiencing, but on a scale above just for ourselves, but on the scale of experiencing what others were feeling. We took the opportunity while we were doing this, because we had several pregnant pauses. In other words, after expression and response, etc., there was this pause. And while it would be easy to feel uncomfortable, I did not feel uncomfortable with the pauses yesterday. because as people processed and as people began to think about what we were talking about, we took an opportunity to breathe in balance and to breathe in balance and expel all of the negative pressure that's associated with balance. Although, again, we reminded ourselves that this pressure was not necessarily a negative thing. And so we asked questions like, could it be that we were feeling could this be the work of birthing something new? Could this be what we were feeling, that pressure, birthing something new into this realm? We know that change is occurring. Could the pressures be like labor pains when they don't seem to end, one thing after the other, but we endure, knowing that the birth of a new life or the birth of something new in creation would be the result. We talked about voting rights and January 6th and white supremacists and all of those pressures, food hunger. We have crises and cataclysmic events all over the world. All of those are parts of the pressure. But the other thing we talked about is, could it be part of what the Israelites experienced as well when they were brought out of Egypt? That they came to Mount Sinai, and that's where God, the Creator, introduced itself, in a sense, and said to them, "I am the sovereign one. There is none like me." And in knowing that, you will have no one like me, and you will not create any idols that attest to being me. So it was at the same kind of thing, and that we were being reminded of the divinity in us. It's in us. And there is nothing that can overpower that divinity. So I believe we left the session yesterday understanding that this is a part of the Elohim experience of being human, and that we have within us everything that we need to push through it and to birth whatever needs to be birthed into this realm. So now I'm going to stop there and see if there's any other person on the phone who wants to contribute to what I just outlined, because I didn't capture everything, but I'm sure in the context of us all having been there, someone else may have picked up on something else.
Yeah. Good morning, Barbara.
Barbara. May I add one more thing? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I yield. Go ahead, Kat.
Kathy, go ahead.
Thank you, Joe. I just wanted to add one thing that I did not say yesterday when we were talking about it is being Elohim when you feel the burden and you're passionate and you feel things deeply. That is Elohim having that human experience. If I am Elohim and I am animalistic, I am passionate too, but I'm passionate only about those things that impact me. I only care about myself. I don't have a burden for humanity. I don't care what happens to everyone else. I am not motivated and moved by anything until it directly impacts my life. And so when we say Elohim having that human experience, I wanted to make certain that we understood you're going to have that emotion. You're going to feel some things deeply. But when we feel it for others and we have compassion and we care, that is the difference in Elohim having that human experience. And I just wanted to lay that out there because I don't think I said that yesterday. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Because George.
Yeah. Good morning. And I just want to, say that, as we experience, the first month of the new year, I've going through an experience where my daughter is in the process of birthing, their child. And as I reflect on the experiences in terms of what she's going through, and I think about, what you shared, in terms of what was presented, I look at it in terms of creation. And I think that, we are the creators having a human experience. We are creating now. And as I, looked at, Genesis, and we were talking about beginnings, we were talking about, being creators. And in verse 2, and I just want to share this because I think it's what's profound for me, Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So when you even talk about the birthing of a child and the eternal waters that's in that womb, and all that's manifesting in terms of us being able to appreciate life, is just a joy to be able to hear as you're teaching us being able to realize that, that Elohim is everything and everything is Elohim, and it's all in, that substance and matter in terms of who we are. So I just wanted to share that thought as I just think about, my daughter's pregnancy and what she's going through. But I know that there's some substance in there that's a blessing if we desire to seek it. I'm done. I
Thank you,
just want to share
George.
those thoughts.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Renya, I think you had a question that related to what we were talking about. If not, if it's
Yeah.
a different question, okay, go ahead.
No, it really, and I didn't realize it until you started talking. So I didn't know yesterday when we got on that there had been that volcanic eruption, underwater
I didn't
volcanic
either.
eruption. Tonga, yeah.
I didn't
So
either.
I was going to ask your thoughts on how that tied in to what we were talking about, and you kind of touched on it as you were kind of starting. I didn't know if there are any other symbols related to that event. So
Yeah.
that was my question.
That was the pressure release for the earth. Everything works all the earth groans and waits for humankind, Elohim having this human experience to begin to get it right and to begin to walk in that understanding and in that being of who it is. And so, yeah, that's part of vent releasing on a physical perspective of a spiritual kind of thing. And that was part of the pressure, part of what we were feeling as part of the pressure, spiritual pressure release yesterday as well, I believe. Anyone else?
Hi, Barbara. This is Ron.
Anyone?
As you were, good morning. As you were talking, I was also thinking about the strength and the energy that comes from this group, and I don't just mean pastoring the teachers, but the energy that I feel from everybody on this phone every week. So, like for example, a good friend of mine is dealing with a death in his family, and it wasn't just any death; it was an unnecessary murder. And he's talking about, he brings it up every day, and I don't hesitate to tell him, I know somebody can help you with this. And I as soon as he started talking about it, names and faces pop up in my head. So, because my thought is anything any of you guys know, I know. So, with that in mind, the pressures that we feel, that's good to talk about it, to bring it out, because we feed off each other's energy. And a lot of times through these conversations, when you see breakthroughs or solutions. So this group is that's we're part of each other's solution when you feel those kind of pressures, to talk it out that way.
Yeah. Thank you, Ron. Before I see if Pastor wants to move from this point on, I just want to remind us that the way we left, part of what we said yesterday was, I think it was Henrietta. Henrietta was reading a book that talked about now, being in the now. And we reminded ourselves that that's all we have. We can go back and try to get the woulda, coulda, shouldas and orders, but that keeps us focused in the past. Or we can go and talk about the what if this and what if that, but that pulls us into trying to create something in the future that really is not formed. What we have right now is now, and how we deal with now is important, because now is eternity in a sense, if you follow what I'm saying. Now creates what the future will be. So the now of understanding that we are actually creators and we're in a birthing process, and that's part of the pressures. Understanding that and not allowing that to overpower us, overpower the divinity in us, because absolutely nothing can do that. It just gives it more perspective. Okay. Pastor, you ready?
I suppose, because everything that you've said actually seems to be foundational for what I have been shown in relationship to who we are. Even when you use the word eternity, that is part of the foundation, because when we look at that from the Hebrew perspective, eternity simply means to see beyond the horizon, to see beyond the present state. And when we sometimes see the horizon, to see beyond the horizon, we might get a glimpse of what's beyond the horizon, but we don't get a full picture. And when we do get a full picture of it, then there is a new horizon to see beyond. So how does that work in our lives? The things that we see as obstacles are actually opportunities to guide us beyond the space that we are currently in, and the reality of our not being able to see beyond the horizon. If we are really, really desirous of knowing what's beyond the horizon becomes an incentive for us to keep moving, for the express purpose of seeing what's there. And if we look at that Hebraically through the eye, what we see is that the horizons that we are observing are actually from within. The things that we see with our eyes that we call a horizon are simply a physical manifestation of what we have been taught to look for. However, when we look at it in the scriptures, we begin to see that the horizon is a search for who we are. And I want to look at that based upon our creation. And when at the onset, Catherine mentioned something in regards to Elohim having a human experience, that also leads me to something that I would like us to look at. Let me begin by saying that when we look at the creation of the male and female in Genesis, what we actually see is the writer saying that the determination by Elohim was to create the human in his image. Now, the reason I say the human is because the word Adam is an extremely poor translation of the word Adam. Does Adam mean juice, liquid blood, etc.? Yes, it does. Does Adam means red? Yes. But it is a reference to blood more so than a reference to earth. And when we read in Leviticus that the life of the man is in the blood, that is referencing Adam. The blood of Adam, or the blood of the human, is physical. The human itself is a manifestation of a spiritual desire to bring Adam this human into existence. What am I saying? When it talks about the image and likeness, the literal understanding of that is that the human was made in the shadow, or just as the shadow of Elohim is. And that word of likeness or image is also the word that's used for idol. So when you see idol God, that's the word of image. That same word is the word that's used when we are created in that image. Now, if you can imagine that the image of the body is a glass, and that glass represents the container that the shadow is being placed in. And if you can see the inside of that glass, the inside surface being the shadow of the Creator. And when you pour the water in that glass, that is, the water represents the characteristic, the breath that was breathed in the nostrils. The breath that was breathed in the nostrils says that it became a living soul, which means that all of the attributes that was placed in that glass became activated, or were activated rather, when the breath was blown into that glass. Am I making sense so far? Are you following me?
Yes.
Okay. If we can see it that way, then this is what we are saying when we are talking about being Elohim in human form. We are talking about the attributes of Elohim, the loving kindness, the mercy, all of the attributes of Elohim are there in this glass. And they are activated by the breath that was blown into the nostrils. Hold on to that. Now, once that happened, now there is formed this thing or this space called a garden. And in this space called a garden, it was placed. Not only was it placed there, it meaning the human, but there is more than one part to the human, just like there is more than one part to Elohim, meaning that there is male and female. Suppose for a moment that the plurality of Elohim speaks more to it being male and female than does it speak to being several different Elohims. Think about it. if that is the plurality of Elohim, then when we look at the removal of the rib for the express purpose of fashioning the woman, then we see something differently than what we've seen in the past. What we began to see is this. In order for the human to be complete, it had to have an awareness that it was both male and female as is its creator. And that being so, then it was also imperative that in knowing that it had male and female, in order for it to be complete, it also needed to understand something else. And that something else is this, that there is absolutely nothing on the face of this earth that is a replica of the human. Because out of all of the animals that were created from the dust of the earth, none of the animals were given the attributes and the character of Elohim other than the human. The attributes of the animals in the earth, the birds of the air and the fish of the sea, were to be determined by the human. And the reason the human would be able to do this is because the human possesses the exact characteristics and attributes of its creator, meaning that there is absolutely nothing that the creator is capable of doing that the human is incapable of doing. The human can do exactly the same things as Elohim, the creator, can do, because it is created as an exact replica of Elohim. It is the representative in this physical place of Elohim in the spiritual place. Questions or comments before I move on? Maybe a better thing would have been to ask, is this clear, or is it clearer than our past discussions about this?
It's clear. One of the things you reiterated, to me anyway, is if I can call the recognition of the feminine part of you, of the man, as being balanced. Without that balance, you mentioned he can do everything that is correct. He cannot do that. It is that balance that gives him that ability to be the creator. And without that recognition, he's no different than any other creature that was made from the dust. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I am saying that. And that's what we mean when we talk about an animalistic attitude as opposed to human.
Yeah.
Any man who mistreats a woman, any man who sees himself superior to a woman, any man who believes that he's the head of the household and the woman is the servant, is animalistic in thought. This thing of balance is far more spiritual. It has far more far-reaching. The tentacles go much further than we think balance is. Balance is not looking at 100 pounds of feathers and 100 pounds of iron on a scale. That's not spiritual balance at all. Spiritual balance is having sense enough to know who you are. It's nonsensical to believe that there is something lacking in a woman that a man possesses. And that's what makes the man superior. That is one of the most asinine thoughts that anyone could ever possess. The creation of the both of them speaks to this. When it says, it is not for this man to be alone, I will make him a helpmeet, that means that I will make him one who has the opposite that are complementary to his. So, are you hearing what understand what I'm saying? I will make him. I will give attributes to this female that are complementary yet opposite to his. So, if that is the truth, and it is, and this was established even before the creation of the human from the dust, the pattern was laid in the first chapter, 27th verse of Genesis. If this is true, then a man is dysfunctional if he thinks that he's superior to a woman. And that is the reason that we are in this dire predicament that we are currently facing, because of the ignorance that we have bought into based upon savagery, based upon brutal indoctrination, based upon indoctrination being embraced or life being lost if you choose not to embrace it. If we look at the scriptures for what they are actually telling us, they are clearly saying to us, you are no different than Elohim. When you understand what it means to be human, you understand that it is impossible for the male to exist without the female. It is impossible for the female to exist without the male. It is impossible for there to be any order in the earth if male-female does not recognize how it complements each other. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's almost tantamount to the 10 utterances, where the first thing you got to know is to know that there's a creator. There's something that created everything. This is the fundamental truth for us. We've got to know that there is a masculine and a female energetic component to us, and that apart from each other, both are out of balance, are dysfunctional. But together, that's what makes them whole, and therefore therein is the power to create as the Creator did. But apart from each other, we're simply making idol stuff. That's idol, that's not in the true image. We're just creating stuff that has no life. But when we work together, the woman opposing the man and vice versa, they fit together. They fit jointly together. And they're not whole unless they do that. Therein is where the power is. Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that. And that
it goes even deeper than that, though. The idleness can lead to destruction, as we talked about the shape of the earth and the way things are going. Remember, part of her is being a helpmate, being a protector, to surround him, to so he has the capacity to destroy himself in the earth if he does not have that balance.
And
So,
Lord,
yeah.
interrupting. That is, he does not have that capacity, Ron. That's what's happening. You see what I'm saying? It's not just the possession of the capacity to do it if you don't. It didn't happen, and and the destruction is in progress. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's literally happening as we speak. And I think that, Ron, we especially as those of us who facilitate, have to be cognizant of how we phrase it, because we can no longer phrase it like it's a possibility, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Because it's a reality. Now, it was always a possibility as long as we were steeped in religion, because we could not see beyond the horizon of religion. Now that we are able to see beyond that horizon, what do we see? We see that it's more than a possibility, that this has been the state of the world forever and a day. And the reason it's getting worse is because there is someone there is a human who's willing to stand in the gap. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
I see so much, and again, I apologize for cutting you off. So, is there or more you see there, Ron?
No problem. I was just Barbara had said something, and just commenting on it, just because it's more than that. It can be self-destructive. It is self-destructive if the two don't come together and become one. And that's what we see going on now. Yeah, you're exactly right.
Thank you. The idea of this is bone is my bone and flesh is my flesh, that has been totally misunderstood. This idea of being bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh, this is what he's saying. He's saying that, I've looked amongst all the animals of the earth, and I saw nothing to complement me. And if it's literally translated, it says, this time it is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh, which means that this time it's successful. I see what I need to complement me. I see the complement. I see the attributes that I need to be complete. The feminine attributes are different than the male attributes, but one cannot exist without the other. Does that make sense? So the idea of bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh carry deeper connotations than we have ever been taught, or at least more than I've seen anyway.
It implies, the bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh, and it's almost like it implies a physical kind of thing when the issue is not physical at all. What it needed, what the atom needed, was that the other spiritual aspect of itself to be whole.
Yeah.
So it had nothing to do with the physical.
And I want us to do something, if we will, in the future. If we say the word Adam, let's make our every effort to say human, because
thank you.
The Hebraic understanding of Adam is human.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And the reason I say that I desire that so deeply is because if we were to consistently insert the word human everywhere the word Adam is mentioned, then we would begin to see a totally different understanding of what's being said in the scriptures. The other thing about that is when we talk about the functionality of the two sets of attributes coming together as one. When the scripture talks about the tree of life in the garden, and it speaks about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, what the literal translation of that speaks to the tree of the discernment of functionality and dysfunction. So what's actually happening is that it's saying that the human became aware of the functionality of what functionality and dysfunction is. And understanding functionality speaks volumes about what these trees are to represent, how our thoughts can bring about a smooth functioning of the earth consciousness or dysfunction, and being able to discern the difference between functionality and dysfunctionality gives us a stronger grasp on who we are as creators. What does that look like? If you don't know what dysfunction is, how can you know what functionality is? Everything is created, has a purpose for the expression iron sharpens iron, meaning that if there is no darkness, there cannot be any light, because without the darkness, you don't know what light exists, or what light is, rather. So that there appears to be an absence of something in order to be aware of the presence of something. And it works both ways. Without darkness, there's no light, or without light, there's no darkness. Without up, there's no down. Without down, there's no up, etc. And our minds see this as duality. The scriptures see it as functionality. The means for us to bring about a greater sense of functionality of thought in this realm, meaning that we understand that an overly abundance of light creates blindness. An overly abundance of darkness creates blindness. Example, if you look directly into the sunlight, the greatest light of all lights in terms of physicality, if you look directly in it, it will blind you. If you are in a room that's closed off and sealed, the darkness, you're blind also in the darkness. So the whole concept of what we understand to be balance is predicated on that light and that darkness being brought to a place of functionality by the human. The human is the one who makes the determination of what balance is, not the physical man in terms of what we experience in absence of knowing who we are, in the absence of recognizing the attributes that we possess, but more importantly, recognizing that we are the spitting image of the one who created us. And the one who created us put us in a space where we had to make some decisions. And the decisions that had to be made was a decision to be robotic by following the dictates of what we had been shown, or by becoming a creator, by experiencing the difference between functionality and dysfunction. And because we are the essence of what that looks like, now that we realize it, we are no longer looking for heaven or a balance when we leave this body. What we understand is the very thing that we have been searching for is who we are, who we've been all of the time. The greatest distraction, the greatest detriment to spirituality has been an abundance of religion as opposed to a balance of understanding spirituality when faced with religious concepts. Does that make sense to you? Or are there questions about that?
I guess listening to what you're saying, I see the human and now is neither or both, male or female. Is not light or dark. It is not bound by time or space. It is the energy of life that sustains the universe and becomes one with the universe. And because of that, those things that we have deemed to be bad, or light versus darkness, and those sort of things. Him bringing into functionality, for example, you talk to 10 people in the same day, you may talk about the same thing, but give it to them 10 different ways, because you have to bring balance. You have to let them see it, and it has to be functional to them. So it gives you the ability to exercise judgment or amount of love that you, whatever the case may be, so that you can bring balance at that time and place. So it literally it is what holds things together and brings wisdom and understanding to any and every situation. So I just, when you say that, I just see the human so much clearer now that all this time we've talked about it. The function of it is far greater than you can imagine.
Okay.
And that does that understanding and that can create frustration and pressure, if you will. Just based on what I understand you were talking about yesterday.
Right. And guess what, Ron? It is imperative that there is pressure and frustration. If there were not frustration, which is actually low-grade anger, then you would not search for the origin of that frustration. Why am I frustrated? You see what I'm talking about? Now, when we talk about the problem or the issue did not change, our attitude towards it changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
What we are actually saying is this. The issue did not change. We brought balance to it. You see what I'm talking about?
Okay.
The balance.
Yeah.
We're not out of kilter. See, we're not overly joyed. Neither are we sad about it. You know.
Mm-hmm.
That's balance. The other thing is, if we were, I was not on yesterday. However, the overviews and the conversations I've had, since then, has spoken to me that one of the main things was being overwhelmed. and experiencing Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day continues until you do something about it. You may be frustrated with your job today and frustrated with the meal you're trying to prepare tomorrow. But both of those frustrations are exactly the same. They are represented differently, but it's still frustration. What happens is, until we learn how to bring balance to frustration, regardless of how it presents itself, we will always be frustrated with something. However, when we recognize that frustrations are teachers for us, they are opportunities to teach us how to be balanced. Being overwhelmed means that we have given too much credence to one thing as opposed to seeking balance for everything. We are more focused on the issue than we are on the solution. And if we are searching for the solution, then we cannot possibly focus on the issue. To find the solution is to remind ourselves we are human. And when we say we are human, that is synonymous with saying there is no difference between my Creator and me. No difference. Is it not written that I say that you are Elohim? The moment that we say that, embrace that, or even allow that thought to travel through the recesses of our minds, the moment we say that, we are embracing who we were created to be. We are understanding that whether it is Kathy, Audrey, Janice, Phoebe, Malaika, Keisha, it doesn't matter. We are saying that we are one with the opposite attributes that we were brought into existence with. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, please ask about this, or just say it doesn't, and I'll make every effort to make it clearer.
It makes sense, Pastor.
Okay.
So, Pastor, I got a question. But I thought in the past when we say, "Oh, they're just human," or is that it wasn't the meaning what you just expressed, what you just explained. So, in the past when we say, "Oh, they're just being human," it seems like there was a different meaning before you explained that. Am I correct in saying that? Because I think I've said that, or we've said that in the past. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I sure can, Miss Jackie.
Thank you.
When we say we are human, we are making an excuse for not being who we were created to be. All because we have been taught about the weaknesses of the human, about the wickedness of the human, about the evilness of the human. We have never been taught about the beauty of the deity of the human. We've never been taught about the power of and dignity of the deified human. What we are seeing now is the true essence of the human. And the reason it was so difficult for us to see it in the past is because we saw a difference between Adam and God. We saw that Adam was the weakness of the human. And that made it an impossibility for us to be God. And the weakness of the human, the evilness of the human, came from what we were taught was the fall in the garden. What we see now is the fall was not a negative thing at all. As a matter of truth, what we call a fall was actually a prescribed journey for the human so it could become aware that it is no different than its creator, Elohim. Does that make sense to you, Jackie, or does that make it clearer?
Yes, it makes it clear.
No.
So
When
you're
you-
saying when? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I know you. When you say yes, there's something behind that.
So I'm still trying to wrap my mind around when you say we're making excuses, because that was before we knew better, right? Is that what you're saying? When we would say, "Oh, they're just being human." Okay.
Yeah.
And
It's
you
also
said
like
something
that
about,
song. It's like that song, I'm only human, I'm just a man, which implies what Pastor just said, that there is no value added to that. What we learned and what we were taught is that the human is weak, that the human is below the angels. So it was totally off base.
okay. So now when we say we're human, the Creator, should we just? I'm
When you say,
when we say now.
you're human,
Okay.
baby, right?
Mhm.
If I say that you are Mrs. Earls, right? I don't have to say that you're Mrs. Earl, a woman, right? Why?
Mhm.
Because Jackie Earls is a woman, right?
Right.
So when I say human, I don't have to say human Elohim, right?
Right.
There's no difference between the human and Elohim. When we say human, we're simply speaking of the physical manifestation of Elohim. That's it.
Okay.
When we speak of Jackie Earls, we are speaking of the feminine manifestation of the woman in the life of Bernard. You see?
Mhm. Okay.
So I don't have to say Jackie Earl is the woman who is the wife of Renard. You see what I'm talking about?
Right.
All that's wrapped up in one thing. But we have a tendency, and what we have been doing in the past is saying that and we are Elohim having a human experience, right?
Right.
Now, what we are doing now is beginning to see it much clearer. Up until a couple of days ago, I saw Elohim having a human experience. However, I understood that it had to be a clearer way to explain it, but I didn't know what it was. That's all I could see, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now that I am able to see beyond that horizon, I am able to see that to say that I'm Elohim having a human experience is actually redundant. By virtue of me saying I'm human, that is the physical experience of Elohim. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
And if there's anyone, help me clear this, make it clearer, please speak up.
Sage, this is Ramel. I have a question or comment. So,
Ramel,
yes.
Is it on this?
Yes. It is. When you were explaining just now, Elohim, using the term human, we don't need to define it. What we've been doing prior to this is when we do things like saying, I'm a female, or I'm black, or I'm rich, or I'm educated, we've been holding ourselves in these split definitions that really have nothing to do with who we are. I hope I'm saying asking.
I understand.
Right.
What we're actually doing is using identifiers
Okay.
that limit us to a system that's inside of a box, that's inside of a box, that's inside of a box.
Okay.
The Hebraic understanding goes far beyond identifiers. We use identifiers as labels of superiority or inferiority. When we look at who we are from the Hebrew, we don't use identifiers. We use characteristics, attributes. The idea of breathing in the face is the idea, the concept of a shared character. Your character is who you really are. Your reputation is who people think you are. So if your character is who you really are, and you don't know, you don't believe, you never embraced that you are Elohim, then you have never really embraced the character that you were created to be. You have embraced a character that's foreign to divinity, but is very well accepted by the animalistic attitude, which means that when the animals of the field were brought to you, you found within that cluster of animals a helpmeet. You found something that complements you. And what was that complements you? Might makes right. Greed above anything else. Discompassionate. Having no empathy whatsoever. If you see dogs fighting, you don't see another dog trying to break up the fight. There's no empathy there. So when we look at the character of the animal, the attitude of that character, then it means that we have embraced a type of character that is foreign to us. And that is why it is so difficult for us to wrap our minds around the ease with which people can perpetuate racism or can pass a bill that denies people health care. How do you do that, we say? And that's because it is a character that's capable of doing that is foreign to us. Does that make sense?
So much so. That's why we can turn a blind eye. Some of us can turn a blind eye when people are killing each other, right?
That's why Kathy said what she did earlier.
Okay.
She didn't say it yesterday, that talking about the reason we feel so deeply for others is because of who we are, as opposed to not knowing who you are and only caring about yourself. That's the animalistic attitude. The depth of our feelings for each other, when you feel frustrated because you feel like you can't change the plight because of the pain of that others are enduring, that is speaking very loudly to you that you have embraced who you are. And it's telling you something far deeper than that. And the thing that it's telling you is, at the seat of your pain is the power to change things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So,
Yes,
Pastor, go ahead, whoever.
Okay, I wanted to ask a question. Can you be at a spiritual, this is Shirley, a spiritual experience, or when you was talking about a human experience? Maybe I'm asking the wrong question. It just got on my mind by being spiritual, having a spiritual experience.
Stop, please.
Stop. Okay.
Say this. I want to say this for you and everyone else on this phone. There is no wrong question. Okay? And
Okay.
you've been around us. You all know better than that. So ask the question. There is no wrong question.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So
Okay.
Pastor, let me.
Is it I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I thought you were
Go ahead.
finished. Because my question is kind of related to yours.
Oh, okay. Okay. I was just asking could you have a spiritual experience instead of just what you were saying, a human experience?
No. See, first of all, there's no difference between a human and spiritual experience. The problem is this. The spiritual understanding or the scriptural understandings of existence does not differentiate between the physical and the spiritual. The differentiation is between the animalistic attitude and the attitude of the divine. That's the difference. Without the physical, there is no spiritual. Without the spiritual, there is no physical. Because all of it comes from the same place. The dysfunctional also comes from the spiritual. And the dysfunctional is what we are experiencing in this world now. You would not know it was dysfunctional if you don't know what functionality looks like. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay, and if it doesn't, we'll expound some more, okay? Not just me, us. We in this together, okay?
Okay.
Audrey?
Pastor, what I hear you saying is that we have been Elohim in human form all along. It's just that through our experiences as humans and through our religious connection, we've been made to believe that we are not Elohim in human form. It's analogous to a child who's been told all his life that you will amount to nothing, you are nothing, you are nothing, you are nothing. And he grows up to be nothing or a criminal or whatever. So that's what I'm hearing. We are Elohim in human form. We've been that all along in the entire existence of our being human. It's just that we've been taught to believe otherwise. And now we're getting to a point where we're realizing that those were lies, and that we're beginning to know who we are. Just like that child who finally realizes that person persons who was telling them they were going to amount to nothing were wrong, and they are able to overcome and begin to believe sort of have a new belief about themselves. So
That's what I see it as.
We are indeed, we are indeed the human or Elohim in human form. However, this is the way I would like to phrase it to hopefully make it more easily embraced. And that is, we are a glass. And Elohim made this form, this shell. And this shell is non-existent in terms of life until the attributes of Elohim are poured into it. If you can see this body as simply a mold, and the liquid that's poured into this mold are the attributes of Elohim. So all these liquids are poured into this mold, and now it is filled. What is it filled with? It's filled with all of these organs, and it's filled with the ability to be mobile and to process. But right now it is inanimate. Now what happens is the energy, the breath, is blown into it. And now with the activation of these organs, with the activation of the ability to process, the character comes alive and begins to activate the attributes. And in doing so, one of the major attributes that is activated is the one of being able to discern functional or dysfunctional. The question becomes, are you taught to embrace the dysfunctional? And the answer is yes. We are taught that we are dysfunctional until we leave these bodies and go to heaven. When we look at the scriptures and we see that functionality means that we function in this earth just as Elohim is and just as Jesus did. That is when we are aware of who we are. And that's the human. The human is simply speaking of a vessel that is Elohim. It is a lot simpler, I think, than we are capable of expressing it at this moment. However, I do believe that at some point, if not now, one of us or some of us are going to see it even clearer than what we are able to be expressive of at this moment. And if there is someone who sees it, or at the very least thinks you do, please add to this conversation. Because right now, what we are doing is being given a picture of what we look like. And in doing so, we are making it easier to understand what I am sure is going to be taught about the 10 utterances, with the understanding that they too are attributes and not some law that is external of us that we disobey, and we're going to be punished as a result of it, as opposed to being attributes that we learn to embrace, so that balance can be real for the whole of humanity. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Good afternoon. This is Mary, and I'm just blown away because I know the last time we talked about, me trying to grasp the Elohim, and then last night, as I was lying down, I thought about that this body is the spirit, Elohim, the creator, is in my body, is in this body. And everything that I see, everything that I do, I'm doing it as a human. So the human concept is a whole lot easier, that word, I guess, is a lot easier for me to grasp, and I see it, and I understand it, and I just think it's amazing that I just came to that last night. I mean, I got a deeper understanding last night, and then you're talking about it today. It's like, oh my, I get it. It's us and living in the here and now. I missed yesterday, but definitely living in the here and now, because we can't do yesterday. We can't even do tomorrow. We can only live here and now, do the things that are required, things that we know to do, and move forward. That's all I want to say. I'm just thank you, because I really got a better understanding today.
Okay. And Mary.
Yes, sir.
Elohim does not live in you.
What live in me?
You are.
What?
Elohim.
Oh, that's right. What I'm saying. No. I'm sorry. Maybe I didn't say it right, because that's what's it. Because once sir?
All I'm trying to do, you said it, right?
Yeah.
All I'm trying to do is give you a deeper picture of what you said.
Okay.
That's all. That's all. See, we have been taught that God lives in you, right?
Yeah. But the Bible tells us that He's going to live. He's going to live in us. He's going to dwell and we're going to be His people. That's what. Yeah. Okay.
That's what the theology of Judaism told you. Understand something. That there are principles that are given by the priest that's wrong, just as wrong as the principles that were given by the pastors. If the priest had been right, why did Jesus come?
True.
And there are people who get upset when they hear this. The Scripture does not hide anything. The Scripture tells you the good, the bad, the ugly, and the indifferent. What do I mean? The Scripture shows us the doctrine that men used to manipulate people, just like the doctrine that men use to manipulate people today. Communion today is a tool of manipulation, just like it was a tool of manipulation in Jesus' day. If it was not a tool of manipulation, why is it that Jesus says, I'm not going to do this ever again until I do it with you in my Father's house? What was he saying? Jesus said, he said, you don't have to do this unless it takes doing this to remember me. If it takes doing this to remember what I'm teaching you, then do it. So if I remember what he was teaching me, I don't have to do communion. So why do we keep doing it?
Yeah,
we're doing it because we're members.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a Baptist, you're doing it because you're a member of the church. Am I right?
That's right. And you get put out if you don't, if you go too long without it. So, yeah.
So this is a tool of manipulation. If you're Methodist, you can do it at any point. But it's still a tool of manipulation.
So what would be the right way to say it if he, because I'm thinking, okay, he lives in me, but I am him. I am it. I am it as I walk, move. But also, and I say that he's in me because once this body has served its purpose, it is no longer useful. And so the spirit, but it's not, it's going to leave this body. So that's why I say live in me, because it's just a shell.
I want to ask you some questions, okay? And this is for the benefit of those who may be thinking, who may be on the phone for the first time, maybe. You said that he lives in you, right?
Right.
So who's the you that it lives in?
Who's the you? Who is the he lives
In me is what you
in
say.
me. Yeah, that's what I said. He lives in me. He lives in my God, I get my soul.
No, so who is the me
Now
that
where's
he lives?
my soul? Huh?
Who's the me that he lives in?
Is that a trick question?
No, you
He
sound
lives
like
in
him.
me. No, Evelyn sound like me. I'm older. No.
Okay.
Okay, no, I'm wondering because is it okay, so he lives in me. His spirit is in me. I don't know.
Thank you. That's exactly the point.
I don't know.
Yes, and that's exactly because when we ask those kinds of questions, it takes us to a place like, what in the world is he asking me? Because if I say he lives in me, then me must be a different vessel than it is, right? So
Okay,
if
say that again. So if he lives in me, me must be
it lives in me, right?
right.
Then if it's not in me anymore, then who is the me that is lived in? There's no existence of the difference between the two. Why?
Right.
Because
Right. Oh.
if that's a difference, then when the me dies, where does the me go? The me goes nowhere. The me exits this body. And the me who exits this body is Elohim. There is no difference. There is no God living in me. I am Elohim. I am God in this body.
And the way that God came into the body, Elohim came into the body, is through the breath.
The day you were born and you took a breath, yes,
Right. So that's who I am.
that's who you are.
Oh, no separation. So it's not me, myself, and I is just Elohim. It's just human. I am human. Okay.
Nope. Right. When you say I am human, all you're saying is that you're Elohim in this vessel, this body. That's it.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. I guess I didn't say it, but that's what I was thinking. But I still use the terms that I'm so used to, that he live in me and all that, because that old habits die hard. But they are dying, praise God. They are dying. So that's what I can say.
And I wanted this conversation because I understand that there are others with the same questions, and I knew that it would not be offensive to you if I keep raising these questions with you.
No, because I want to know. I want to learn. I'm not on this just to be wasting time. Hey, I got a lot of work to do as a human. So teach me. That's why I'm here.
Okay, but I really, really hope that far more than you and I got some clearer understanding from our discussion. Is what I'm saying.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I hope so. Thank you so much. Yes.
Anyone else? Does that make it clearer? The discussion that we just had about the me and who's the me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Great teachable moment.
Say again?
Said it was a great teachable moment.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I have another question. So can we, would it be proper to say that, just like Jesus was a manifestation, we are manifestations of Elohim, our
Yes.
present, we are the manifestation. Okay. Now that, okay. Yeah, all that coming. Yes, it's coming together. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Because I know we've been on for a minute, and I'm not guided by time. Please understand that. I'm guided by understandings, and this is leading us to a place of our understanding of something that we've not even mentioned. So, are there any other questions or comments in this regard?
I have a question. I don't know if it's in this regard, but I'm going to put it out there, then you let me know. You remember when Jesus said, if you believe like I believe, you can do these things. And men, instead of them believing the way Jesus believed, they throwing it back in Jesus' hand. You understand what I'm saying?
Greater works.
I do.
Because I don't think Jesus says, if you believe like I can believe, you can do the works. But they throwing it right back in Jesus' hand.
Yes, sir. Let me show you something, Charles, how on point that is. Jesus said, if you believe as I believe, you trust the Father as I trust him. If you have that confidence, what is Jesus saying? If you believe as I believe. Believe what? If you believe that you are God. In the 10th chapter of John, when Jesus was accused the scribe said to Jesus, you speak as though you are Elohim, Allah, because it's in Aramaic. Jesus said, is it not written in your book or in your scriptures that I say that you're God? And then they didn't even challenge that. So Jesus is saying, if you believe, as I believe, if you believe that when the book says that you are God, that that's who you really are, then you can do anything that I can do. That's all he's saying. But we have been taught to believe Jesus, but to deny that Jesus is telling the truth. How can you believe Jesus and not believe what he said about that? Or at the very least, not be curious enough about it to find out what it means. That's the least you can do if you are labeled to be preacher/teach anybody who's offering an understanding of the scriptures. What did he mean by that? If you believe that you are God, you can do what I do. What is the inverse of that? If you don't believe it, you won't be able to do it. And guess what? Obviously, we must not have been believing it. Because the things that Jesus did, we were not able to do them. And this is not about walking across somebody's lake. This is not about standing on the face of the lake and pulling somebody out of the water. This is not about opening blinded eyes. This is about opening blinded eyes. This is about standing on the surface of confusion, standing on the surface of pain and suffering, and pulling people out of it by bringing them to an understanding of who they are. But you can't do that. You can't be on the surface of it without being overwhelmed by it if you don't know who you are. Does that make sense, Mr. Charles?
Yes, sir. A whole lot of sense.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
And one more question, Real.
Okay.
And if God came in us at birth, so God had to come in Jesus at birth.
Repeat repeat what you said, Charles, and then I wanted to comment.
Okay. If God came in us at birth, so God came in Jesus at birth. But Jesus kept that Jesus he works in his. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I do, and I want to say something to that. Okay. God did not come into us at birth. We were already existent before we entered the body, which means that we were already God before we entered the body. God did not come in us. From the beginning of the human, the creation of the human means that the human has always been Elohim because it was created in that image. It had, from the beginning, all of the attributes. It is like you. You have all of the attributes of parents. You had those in the body, the physical body, in the spiritual essence. The breath that entered that body was already God when it entered that body. And when it entered that body, it activated those characteristics that were in that body. And that's why you act like a daddy or act like an uncle or remind somebody of someone who lived 50 years before you were born, that kind of thing. So it's not, God did not enter you. You entered that body. You have always been Elohim, and you always will be. We'll stop. Okay?
Yeah. So let's start as we talk about Elohim and we talk about human. So let's start with Jesus. Jesus, it wasn't that he was, but Jesus is, as in present tense, a God. Jesus decided to come into this physical, form to then still be a God, but to experience God in a human form or in a human experience, meaning that he always was God, God always is a God, but came temporarily in a human experience. And in that through that human experience, Jesus did not lose any of his God abilities, for lack of better words, the entire time. So he was never less than what he was while experiencing being a human. Now, as this relates to us, we too are gods. We have always been gods. We speak of being human, we simply mean being a God and experiencing temporarily a human experience. But as it relates to God being inside of us is what comes first is a God, because that's what we are to our roots. The God that we are is more permanent than anything and supersedes anything. Ms. Vermeil asked, we were talking about identifiers earlier today. So we all think of a child coming into this earth and a child being able to first crawl and then walk and then eventually run, which is typical. And the idea of identifying with only one thing can blind us from the other things and not understanding, because we put ourselves in a box. So as Jesus is talking about, we can do all the things that he did and even more. It's the idea of, as an example, starting to crawl and then saying, I can crawl, and only being focused on crawling and never actually exploring or getting up to even walk or even run, because he said, yes, I am a crawler. And we saw Jesus running, but we did not see ourselves being able to do that because we thought of ourselves as crawling. I identify as crawling. That's how I get around. I get on all fours and I just crawl wherever I need to go. So when we say human, And I'm glad we had the conversation. Thank you, Mary, for definitely participating to bridge that gap of understanding and questioning that, and all of us have learned it from a religious standpoint of that separation. But when we're saying we're human, we're saying temporarily we are having a human experience, but we are gods and have God ability. I'm done unless there are any questions.
So I take it from what you're saying. I constantly try to, because I can overreact sometimes, and I constantly try to keep in mind my feelings and emotions, because that's what takes me on journeys. So what I'm hearing you say, and I agree with what you said. I'm just trying to see it from a different way, I guess, or see the same thing, just say it differently. But my feelings and emotions are the instruments that allowed me to take these spiritual journeys. The human has the ability to be in multiple places. Of course, not physically, but I don't think that needs to be explained. But when I see myself as being a little lower than I am, then those same feelings and emotions can take me below my humanity and back to the animalistic state. So that's the part that we sometimes lose, or help us to lose our focus, is because we're not always in touch with or have that type of discipline to not let that journey begin to take us somewhere we don't want to be.
Yeah.
Does that add to what you, or am I seeing it a little differently?
Well, yeah, it's kind of like a loop. So all of our experiences and then our emotions, etc., is a reflection of what we believe. So when I was talking about the idea of crawling, and so to use that as a metaphor, we have for a very long time only believed ourselves to be able to crawl. So let's say, for example, I'm in New York right now, and so I walk a lot of places. So if I believe myself to only be able to walk places, and it's super cold right now, I have to get on all fours and walk someplace. If I need to go to the store or something, it's extremely difficult. What I'm not doing is I'm not thinking that I can easily just walk or even run to not be in the cold long if I need to. So as I'm sitting, I'm making this up as I go. So as I'm sitting in my apartment, when I talk about emotions and belief, if I only believe myself to be able to crawl, I am now dreading or fearing actually going to the store, because that sounds like it's going to take forever and it's going to be extremely uncomfortable with the brutal coldness, especially with this supposed to snow later on this afternoon. If I face it like, okay, I need to go to the store because I need to go get some food and I can run, it's not, I don't have the same emotions of dreading actually going to quickly and do that, because I know I have the ability to quickly do it. So as we go throughout life and through our normal experiences, because we did not believe we were Elohim, because we thought we were not worthy, because we thought that we had absolutely no power and we was basically victim to the circumstances, we begin to fear what we felt like was inevitable, and still, do at times now, because we fear something is going to happen that we can't control and we don't like. As we continue to go and we begin to have not only these conversations amongst each other, but more importantly with ourselves, and we become open and understand and walk in and embrace who and what we are, our experience with the world and the things that we deal with begin to change. Things don't bother us the same way, because those underlying beliefs begin to change. I don't feel powerless. This thing that I felt like before, I had no control over, was going to ruin my day. It doesn't even no longer exist because I'm like, I don't want to, in a sense, I'm above that, or I understand how this particular thing doesn't actually cause a hindrance towards me. So if we can just imagine right now, for example, and think about all the things that we might be fearful of or we're not looking forward to right now in this particular moment, today, yesterday when we were talking about Ground Day, et cetera. And then think about in that same situation, how would Jesus feel, or the Jesus, or how we identify Jesus or have traditionally identified Jesus, how would he feel in that particular situation? Would the same thing bother him the same exact way, et cetera? And the truth of the reality is, even though we have not embraced it, we are Jesus. And then if we actually believed that we were Jesus, we would have a different experience and the things wouldn't affect us in the same way. So basically all that we are talking about in terms of being human is consciously having the understanding that not that God is within us, but we are God in a human experience. And as we talk about, or as the Bible continues to talk about in places about, and Jesus talks about the Father being with you, etc. What it's really saying is that we will understand that we are one with the Father. It's not any time that the Father is not with us. It's not any time that we're not God. What changes is our perception and understanding to know that we are one with God. And so from our understanding or our perspective, because it has changed, God is now with me. God has always been with us because God has always been us.
Well, I want to leave us something to think about because it's just based on more research. So when we think of ourselves as human, we've operated as human beings based on the rules of the 5 senses. And just recently, just you've got 2 more. So there's 7 senses that humans have. But the 8th sense is the sense that allows us to realize we're all connected and we're God. And so when we think about being human, it's really operating and moving in those 5 to 7 senses that we were always taught. But the 8th sense is the connection. And once you get to that level of connection, you realize we're all the same and connected to God and each other. That means that we're who we're supposed to be, and we understand that. But I think, just listening to everybody, I think in the human form, we're operating those rules of the 7 senses. So when we understand that 8th sense, that connection, that origin that's always existed and never dies, that we understand the connection with each other without actually going in that direction today. But if we can think about ourselves being in search of that 8th sense, that connection and that ability to understand who we are and the connection and where we started, that separates the human being from Elohim.
Hey, Ash, it's Ron. Educate me, if you will. I don't know the other 2 senses. I know the 5 senses. We grew up with that. What else are you elaborating about?
So when you start talking about the senses, you're talking about, hearing, touch, taste, smell, and sight. But then when you start realizing how this body has lived in the earth, you have like a vestibular system, and that's the perception of your body versus gravity. Like, how do we move your balance and things like that? So they've started attributing that to a sense of, you have people now with vertigo and things like that. So vestibular system is kind of like how you move in relation to gravity and your balance. And then it's sort of a proprietary session where you realize your position in the parts of your body in relationships to, like, you know, what's around, like lifting your arm. It's more like neurological, or moving your body parts or feeling those. So people are getting paralyzed now, but then they're like, okay, you know what, I can actually still feel my toes. So they've kind of added those two senses along with the other five. And those are things that we've always felt like when you're lying down versus standing up, you're sitting in a chair versus like, so those motions and those being able to like sense your fingertips, your toe tail, those two senses have sort of been studied and added. So those seven senses have kind of like have always been the way that we've operated. But what if we start looking into the eighth sense, when we start talking about in our body, in our group, the pineal gland, and being able to sense each other or feel someone's pain from across the world. When we start understanding that, I think that's the Elohim part of us that we should tap more into in these 5 to 7 senses that we've always been studying and used to. We've kind of like used those as a restriction for being human. That's how the body actually moves around in this earth. But if you start thinking in the connection spiritually and Elohim wise, it's that eighth sense that connects us all, and we start developing that so that no matter what happens to this body, that's the connection that you always feel, and that's the spiritual, that's the Elohim connection, versus limiting ourselves to like being able to move and function in the body in this earth. So it's definitely something to kind of look at and really look at how we separate the two, and then you realize that you tap into the eighth section, that eighth sense. You don't need the other seven. But right now, we kind of toggle between the 5 or 7 to function. But when we truly tap into the eighth, you don't need the other, 7.
On the heels of what Ed said, may I add something, please?
Sure.
And it's a question and a comment, or maybe it's a question, I'm not sure. But what we're learning today, based on everything that's been said by everyone who's added something, is it safe to say that we today we are learning what it means to be I am as well? And if I am learning that I am the I am, when I listen to Ron say that in this journey, if I'm the human having this experience, what is this experience? I'm the human living life. And so in life, there will be situations all the time. We talked about Elohim is the name or a characteristic of God and what that means. And we said one of those characteristics of Elohim is to make judgment. And we said judgment means to make decisions. Not to stand in judgment and rule over someone, but to make decisions about circumstance. So if I say I'm having a situation that I've encountered, and I say I am angry, and I say I am distrustful, I am this, I am that, then I am lowering the I am to feel a certain way and make a decision about whatever it is I'm facing in that circumstance at that moment. Therefore, I create the opportunity to I create the circumstance that I'm going to have to deal with now based on how I see I am. Because every time I say I am something, I'm looking at it spiritually now. I see that as, where am I taking the I am? Am I taking the I am to a place to make a decision to come from a place of balance and harmony? Or am I taking the I am to a place to say I'm going to make a decision to be distrustful, angry, upset about the circumstance or whatever, because the experience is life. And when I think about, we keep saying, well, what are the big things we're supposed to be doing? Where are the miracles? Where are these things that the I am or that the human is supposed to be doing? What Jesus did in his day was appropriate for what needed to be done in this day. what we are living through right now, it is the circumstances that we are to be human / I am, one and the same in that circumstance, and make those judgments and those decisions to create that world that we want to live in, as opposed to just taking the I am and lowering the I am, our spiritual selves, to make the decision to just come out of, as Bess was saying, out of my five senses, and I'm reacting out of emotion only or out of my feelings only. And if I'm seeing it the right way, I guess that's my question. Am I seeing it the right way? And if I am seeing it the right way, that will make me more mindful of what I am doing when I say I am feeling a certain type of way, because I'm going to look at the I am as the spiritual part of me, as the human having the experience, and recognizing that I am lowering the I am to create something that I don't even want to live in, that I don't want to even be a part of, because I'm letting my emotions take the lead, as opposed to recognizing I have the power to make a decision and just we call it setting the course and just be. That's what all of that means to me if I'm seeing this the right way. So I guess my question is, am I seeing that the right way? And when we talk about human, is that not being the I am? And even if I hear George say all the time, I am George Clark. I don't know your middle initial, George, I'm sorry. But he says his whole name because he's connecting, making certain that he's reminding himself of the connection that I am one with the Father. And if we do that in a circumstance, so before I open my mouth and say, you know what, I'm angry about that, I had a choice in that situation. Did I need to be angry in that situation? Or could I have sought a place of balance and stayed in a place of balance, recognizing who I am as this human who is Elohim? Am I saying this the right way, Pastor?
Yes, you are. As a matter of fact, you've opened up a whole new door for understanding, for me anyway. What I see in all that you have relayed to us based upon what ST also said, and that's something I definitely would like to explore as well. What I hear is that we have to be cognizant, as you said, of I am angry. Why? Suppose for a moment that the reason we have not seen marked change that we have desired is because of our inconsistencies, without realizing we're being inconsistent. When we look at, say, for example, Kristen Cinema and Joe Manchin, I'm upset with them. So what you're saying is you're divinely upset with them. Why? Because they are doing something that you think they should not be doing, and you don't feel like you can stop them, which means that you have relinquished your power to overcome to them. Every time we make statements like that, what I'm beginning to see is I am seen as being inferior by people who feel superior. That is also relinquishing authority. So we have to be cognizant about what we attach I am to. So we don't do that. So we are aware, Kathy, as you said, we should be, of what this means and the amount of weight it carries. What I see in this is we are learning that there is a much easier way to bring about change. And that easier way of doing that is by virtue of seeing that there is no difference between human, Elohim, I am, all of them are one and the same. And if we are cautious enough to say, I am the change that's necessary, as opposed to saying, I am angry about what's not changing, then we will make the change. You made a statement that Jesus dealt with those things that were pertinent during his walk in this earth. Now we are to deal with things that's pertinent to our time in this earth. And the way we deal with them is by recognizing the change that's needed and not negating that needed change by virtue of I am angry, I am upset, or nothing ever changes. Because every time we say nothing ever changes, we are giving life to those things that we want to change. Every time we say that I'm fearful of what's going to happen, we are giving life and power to those things that you are fearful of. Our vernacular has to dramatically change. Jesus never said anything about being afraid of anything. He always spoke in the affirmative about what should be. You tear down this temple, I will rebuild it in 3 days. Though, yes, it's a metaphor, but it is an understanding that I am capable of restoring anything that you seek to destroy. That's what I am hearing in what you're saying, Kathy. Am I correct?
Yes, because as you were talking and I'm listening to the whole conversation, all of a sudden, and we've talked about I am so many times, but the power of that in human and understanding human today and how through my speech, because my speech will sometimes precede my actions, and then I don't know, sometimes it may even happen simultaneously, but in the event, when I begin to say the I am is this, the I am may not be operating in power if the I am is all into emotions and feelings and not recognizing that you have the power, meaning we have the power to set the parameters for what we will allow to happen, stay the course, and just be. Because that's what it means to make judgment. That's what it means to be purposeful. Such a time as this, everything that's happening right now, we are the ones that are here for such a time as this to bring about the change that is needed to bring balance. I said on yesterday, I believe that with every fiber of my being. If I didn't, I wouldn't call in anymore, because I would look at the state of being of the world and say, it's too far gone. There's nothing we can do. I would never believe that based on who we are and what we're seeking and how things are opening up to us. And today it just resonated with me as being human. Recognize that you are the I am. And then whatever you put with I am, whatever words you're going to put with I am the I am, just be more cognizant of what you're going to say, because that's the decision you're going to make, and that's what you're going to create. And that's why nothing will change. I can be, I am frustrated, I am tired, I am this, that, or whatever. I want to learn how to just be, I am whatever I need to be in any situation, whatever I need to be, that's what I am. And if I can learn to focus that way, that is also the human having the experience, because experience is just another word for I am the human living life in such a time as this. And I know we said there is no such thing as space and time in the spiritual realm, but I also recognize that every generation has had an opportunity to get it right. And everything, the kingdom of God will continue to advance. And if our generation misses it, it's going to be passed on to the opportunity will be passed on to the next generation. I want to be the generation that sees balance come into existence in this realm because of who we are. And as a result of that, if we can continue to focus on who we are and not lose sight of that, that's why I think today was so powerful, because it really opens up to me more than ever what it means to be Elohim. I am, all of the things that we've been saying, it became a reality for me today. So I just wanted to share all of that and say thank you.
And this is Barbara. I want to say y'all all up into the Kool-Aid of the 10 Commandments. You know that, right? Of the 5. You all up into that. because the first thing is knowing God exists and knowing the cause that knowing the Creator exists and knowing that it's the cause of everything. It's and that I am the Creator as well. And then what Kathy just said, if I call myself anything other than those attributes that were that are instilled in what Pastor uses as an example of the glass, which receives those attributes. If I call myself anything apart from that, I'm doing the committing the idolatry thing. I'm doing doing the swearing falsely thing in a sense. I'm not being true to my essence. So you guys are all up in there. Thank you.
Yeah, and also, Pastor, if I may, Kathy, I just want to thank you for reaffirming my affirmation. I am, George Clark, because again, as I mentioned, I see not just my name being George Clark, but just the reverence of me being Elohim. And again, it's just a blessing, to see it, in the way that we're speaking, but again, all of us have the power of discovering who we really are. And I just want to just thank you for just reaffirming that, and at the same time, I thank, the Creator for this conversation that we all having. I'm done.
George.
Thank you, George.
I was listening as you spoke. When you say that, or I say that I am James Richard, then the question becomes, who is James Richard? Not who someone else say I am, but who is James Richard to me? Not that my name defines it as much as what are those characteristics that I am James Richard desire to be expressive of. What type of character
Yes.
is James Richard? As opposed to simply saying, I am James Richard just because my name is James Richard. I am more than that name. And I think, and also I do believe that what most people who are here in this conversation may be unaware of is that George was the initiator and organizer of the International Ambassadors Mission. And that's where the whole concept of I am has its origin within these confines. However, when I think about that now, I see it differently than I see it differently now than what I did at first.
Plugged up to this? Oh.
Would you mute your phone, please? I see it differently now than what I did in the beginning. And when I see an International Ambassadors Mission, I see a different thing there. What do I see? I see international or global ambassadors mission, meaning that we are responsible globally to be ambassadors for the enhancement of humanity as we live in this earth realm. Does that make sense to you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
That's who we are.
Yes.
So what I want to do at this point is express my sincere thanks for all of you who not only have participated with your questions and responses, but simply some of those who are participating with your energy and presence. And I do want to explore or to continue to discuss these senses that S brought up in relationship to the I am. Why? Because I was diagnosed a few weeks ago with a vasotubular concussion. And the vasosystem that received the concussion is the system that ST was describing as the seventh sense. And I did not realize that until today. So I want to explore that. And one of the reasons is because one of the things he said was, once we get to the eighth sense, we don't need the other seven. And I want to look at that because I'm in the process of repair for the system, the vascular system that is responsible for my equilibrium being off, as well as speech, my vision. So this system has a deeper involvement in our lives than we know, and I didn't even know it existed until it was diagnosed. So in that regard, I want you to explore it so that we can see not only how we are fearfully and wonderfully made, but also so we can see the bridge between what we considered our physical attributes or senses and our spiritual realities. Okay? So if there aren't any more questions or comments, I would, of course, after we see where there are questions, continue to travel this journey on our next session, because I do believe at the point where we cross the bridge into the Ten Commandments or 10 ordinances, we're going to see a huge correlation between the tapestry that's being knitted and the tapestry that has already been knitted by us in the past. Questions or comments? If not, I appreciate your time today.
I have a comment. I'd like to thank everyone who participated because I got a lot out of it. I mean, you just don't know how much I got out of it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
I think just one observation of what S said is it further shows us how science kind of ties into our lives without us knowing it, and I mean your spiritual life, because he really was talking about the evolution of who we are, that you start with these five senses that you see individually, and you move to this eighth sense, this sense that captures a new beginning that ties everything together. And that's the part I heard when he said you didn't need the rest of them. So that's interesting to me.
Yep, and the numbers for interest maybe wrong got me. 7 senses, then the 8th.
Yeah, then the 8th, yeah.
New beginning? Yeah. So, S, will you be available to engage us with this tomorrow also?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we look forward to continuing this journey tomorrow.
Thank you.
Questions or comments? Thank you. And I know that you would prefer being able to sit and look out the window at the ice because you can't go anyplace than to be doing what? I don't know. If nothing else to claim our attention, then I think prepare dinner and continue to watch the ice. Good evening.
We will. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.